Hey there, my name is Hector Romero, and I want to share with you all a very shady experience that I had a few years ago when I worked at a McDonald's in California, United States, on the night shift. At that time, I was 19 years old. I was working that shift since I went to university during the day, and that helped me a lot with my university expenses. My parents are Mexican, and they came to this country when they were young. I was born here, but life here is not easy at all. You have to work hard to have a decent life. But anyway, as I told you, I worked at night. On that shift, there were almost no customers in the restaurant eating. Most of them only came to order at the drive-thru. My other 3 coworkers and I took turns at the register, serving at the drive-thru and cleaning. I remember that night I was at the counter serving, but there were almost no customers inside the restaurant. There was barely a table with a couple who were obviously coming from a party. It was almost 2 in the morning. Then I saw a homeless man come in. Or, as they say here, he was very young, I don't know, maybe around 20 or 25 years old. But he looked bad, not only because of his dirty and torn clothes, but his face also looked very dull, like he was out of his mind. I thought maybe he had ingested substances. So I spoke to another one of my coworkers to let them know the situation. They can enter the restaurant, but if they start bothering people or making any disfigurements, we have to ask them to leave. And if they get violent, we call 911. So I just wanted him to keep an eye on him with me. But the guy went straight to the bathroom. Back then, the bathrooms didn't have codes like they do now. Everyone could enter, and it was only one bathroom for men and women. I continued serving the few people that entered the restaurant, but approximately an hour went by and I never saw that young man come out of the bathroom. The restaurant was empty, only my coworkers were there. I was just going to tell my partner that that young man was in the bathroom when suddenly we saw him come out. But his face was very pale and he could barely walk. We saw him sit at a table in the back, doing nothing, and we left him there since there was nothing we could do about it. I left the counter since it was my turn to clean the tables. When I got to a table that was behind where the boy was, I heard him crying. Of course, I didn't want to get closer. On the contrary, I decided to back away and give him some space. I went back to the counter and let my colleague know what had just happened. But he turned around and said, "There's no one at that table." I turned my head, and in fact, the boy was no longer there, and the chair had been adjusted. I didn't understand how he had left so quickly in just a matter of seconds while I walked from there to the counter. But anyway, I continued with my work. A few minutes passed when a colleague who had been assigned to clean the bathroom screamed in horror. We all ran to the bathroom where she was. We saw her outside with her hand over her mouth, pressed against the wall, with her eyes watery and horrified. When we entered the bathroom, we saw that young man lying on the floor in a pool of blood because he had cut his left wrist. That was so shocking to see. I froze, and I couldn't say anything. I couldn't even scream. I don't know which of my colleagues called 911, but it didn't take even 5 minutes to arrive. They took our statements from all of us. They asked us to see the security cameras, and there we realized that the young man, once he entered the bathroom, he never came out of there. They questioned me again because, in my statement, I had told them that I had seen him leave the bathroom to go cry at a table in the back. But in the video, I appear alone, cleaning the tables. And when he got to the table that was supposedly behind him, he only stayed for a few seconds, looking at that table. Then I quickly went to the counter, but in the video, the young man didn't appear sitting. Minutes later, when the experts arrived, they said that he had been dead for at least an hour. So, in effect, he entered that bathroom and never came out, at least alive. That's how it is. He himself decided to end his life, and we don't know why he decided to do it in a restaurant so that at least someone realized his death. Many ask me if I'm scared, knowing that I saw his ghost trapped in that place where he himself ended his life. But no, rather, I feel very sorry for him because I imagine the kind of life he had and what led him to commit such an act. What I do have to tell you is that after that event, I was moved to another branch. But I still had contact with some of my colleagues from that McDonald's who told me that at night, very strange things happened in the place. Like the chairs moved by themselves when there was no one there. That is to say, they were at the counter and they heard a chair move, but when they looked out, there was absolutely no one there. Even one night, a colleague went into the employee bathroom, which is right in front of the customer bathroom, and she heard someone knock on the door several times. She yelled that it was busy, but they kept knocking. She thought it was a joke from one of her colleagues, but when she came out and asked who had done it, they were all behind the counter, each one doing their tasks, and they were surprised to hear her question. Well, there were no customers in the restaurant. Also, one night, a customer who was eating there went to the counter to report that there was a person at a table who might need help. It was a young man who was crying inconsolably and had scared his young son. But when one of the employees went to check, there was no one there, although the lady kept saying that he had been there a few seconds ago and that she didn't know where he had gone. Another thing that my colleague, the one I got along with the most, told me was that around 5 in the morning, when he was almost off shift, he was going to go into the employee bathroom, but he heard someone crying in the customer bathroom. He says that he felt very scared because he was almost sure that when he opened the door, no one would be there. But even so, he opened the bathroom, and in fact, the bathroom was empty. They say that everything started happening after the homeless man died, and that they have no doubt that he is the one trapped there, a place from which he will probably never leave due to the fact that he ended his own life. Anyway, that's all I have to tell you. If you're enjoying the video, please subscribe the channel for future videos, and like and share with your friends. Hi, I need to share something with you, but I want to stay anonymous. I still feel guilty about that night, even though I didn't do anything wrong. It's been 3 years, but it's still the most traumatic thing I've ever been through. This happened in Quintana Roo, and it all started one night when I was driving home. It was past 10 p.m. and I was starving. I lived alone, and there was nothing in my fridge. I needed to grab something to eat. The only place still open on my way home was a McDonald's. They close at 11 p.m. every night, so I figured I'd hit the drive-thru. I pulled up, but there were no cars. The place was empty, which was great because I just wanted to get my food and go. I honked to place my order, but no one answered. I thought maybe the drive-thru was closed, but I decided to wait a bit longer. If no one came, I'd have to park and go inside. After a few minutes, I heard a young man's voice. He apologized for the delay and asked what I wanted to order. His voice sounded strange, like he was trembling. I placed my order, and he told me to go to the first window to pay. When I got there, I saw him behind the window. He looked really young, probably under 20. He seemed nervous and tense. He didn't even look at me when he spoke. It was weird because there was no noise inside. No other employees were around. It was super quiet for a fast food place. I got impatient and asked if it would take long because I was in a hurry. He turned his head slightly and said he'd be right out, but he looked like he was trying to tell me something with his eyes. I couldn't figure it out. I asked if he was okay, and he just said yes without looking at me. I didn't know what else to say, so I waited in my car. No other cars came. It was just me. Finally, a young woman came out and gave him my order. She left right away and he handed me my food. I paid him in cash, thanked him, and drove off. The whole way home, I kept thinking about how strange the whole thing was. I told myself I'd never go to that McDonald's again. But I got home, ate my dinner, and went to bed. The next morning, I was getting ready for work and listening to the news. Suddenly, I heard something that made my heart stop. They said that the McDonald's I had been to the night before had been robbed. The employees had been held hostage for hours until the manager came to open the safe. But one of the employees, the young man who had served me, was killed. I was in shock, couldn't breathe. I wanted to faint, couldn't believe it. I kept thinking that the young man had tried to ask me for help with his eyes, but I didn't understand. I felt so guilty and angry at myself. I didn't even know what to think. Most likely, while he was serving me, one of the robbers was pointing a gun at him. That's why he couldn't ask for help. I don't know why they killed him, but it's something that will be with me forever. This story isn't about ghosts or anything paranormal. It's about living through something truly terrifying. I wouldn't wish this on anyone. Hello, I'm Johnson, and I need to share something with you. It's a story that still gives me chills. It was something so grotesque and terrifying that it made me realize we never really know who we're sharing space with. Let me start by telling you that I worked at a McDonald's in Pennsylvania. I'm Peruvian, but I came to this country years ago to make a living. McDonald's was one of my first jobs. This restaurant was open 24 hours a day, and I worked the night shift from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Took me a while to get used to it, but I eventually loved the quiet of the night. There weren't many customers at those hours. Sometimes hours would pass without anyone coming in, or they'd just go through the drive-thru. That McDonald's was in a small town, so there weren't many people around. I remember one night when I was on my shift, packing orders for the drive-thru. There was a lull, so my colleagues and I were just chatting and waiting for customers. Suddenly, a very tall and wide man walked in. He was clearly overweight. He was a white American guy, and as soon as he walked through the door, he loudly asked for 5 cheeseburgers to be prepared for him. My colleague at the register asked if he wanted anything else, but he just shook his head, paid, and without another word, went to sit at one of the tables. He had a black backpack with him, which he placed on the chair next to him. He was the only customer at the time, but then an older couple came in. They were passing by and decided to stop for something to eat. I know this because they asked one of my coworkers for directions to a road they were looking for. They ordered and went to sit down, 2 tables in front of the other man. After a short while, the man's order came out. My coworker took it to his table. Everything seemed normal until I noticed the guy opening his backpack. Suddenly, the place was filled with a horrible smell, like something rotten. We didn't know what it was or where it came from, but even the couple who had just arrived started making faces. The lady covered her nose with a napkin. We looked around, trying to figure out what was causing the smell. The bathrooms were clean. A coworker had just cleaned them. It was more like something was rotting. Suddenly, we heard the lady scream in terror. She and her husband were staring at the man with shocked eyes. I ran over with a friend to see what was happening. What I saw, I never thought I'd witness in my life. This guy had taken human remains out of his backpack. Body parts like fingers and even an ear, still with blood. He was putting them on his hamburgers, first removing the meat that came with them and replacing it with the human flesh he had brought. He was preparing his food as if nothing mattered. The lady was screaming, and we all realized what was happening. I saw him take a bite of his hamburger in the most disgusting and grotesque way. The couple ran out of the place, horrified. I ran to call the police and tell them what was happening. Meanwhile, the man just sat there, eating his hamburgers filled with human flesh as if nothing was wrong. The police arrived and arrested him. They asked us all to leave the place because they needed to investigate, but not before we gave our statements. The next day, I watched the local news, hoping they'd say something about the guy. It took a while, but they finally broadcast the story with images of the McDonald's and a photo of the man. According to the authorities, he was a very dangerous serial killer in the area who had taken the lives of at least 10 homeless people and then ate them. They raided his house and found many remains. He confessed to all his atrocities. The guy was not right in the head. He was immediately arrested and without the possibility of bail. I was in shock when I saw the news. I couldn't believe that I had been in front of that guy and had to witness him eating one of his victims as if it were something normal. After a few days, we returned to work, but I was terrified to enter that place. It made me relive everything that happened that night, and I didn't feel calm. We also noticed that the clientele decreased after that news, except for a few curious people. But honestly, I don't blame anyone for not wanting to eat there. Years have passed since that event, and I've slowly gotten over it, but I still perfectly remember those human parts that the guy was about to eat. That's something that will remain in my memory forever. Monsters aren't only paranormal. In fact, the worst ones are here inhabiting this earth. They might be people we share a space with one day, and we'll never know. I'm Sophia. I'm originally from Sinaloa, Mexico. When I was younger, I worked at a McDonald's in my city, and it really helped me pay for my college tuition. I spent about 2 years working there, and I was mostly at the drive-thru. I was the one talking through the speaker, taking orders from people in their cars, and then delivering their food through the window. There was this elderly man who used to come by almost 4 times a week. He was a retired university professor, and he'd always get his hamburger and fries around 8 p.m. Most of the time, it was my turn to serve him and my coworker who sometimes helped me, and I both really liked him. He was super polite and just a nice guy. He always greeted us by name, and we knew his order by heart. Months went by like this, and one night, I was working the drive-thru when I heard that man's voice. He called me by name like he knew it was me serving that night. I recognized his voice right away and greeted him warmly. It had been a few days since I'd seen him, so I was happy to hear from him. I asked if he was going to order his usual, but there was a pause. I called his name again, asking what he wanted to order, but then he said, "Sophia, thank you for always being so kind to me. Never change your way of being with people." Felt really nice to hear that. I thanked him and told him I liked being kind and that I really liked him too. Then I asked again if he was going to order his usual, but he didn't answer. It was really strange. He never moved forward to the window either. We didn't have a camera at the drive-thru ordering spot, but there was one upstairs in the manager's office. Only the manager had access to the recordings, so I had no way of knowing if he had left or not. A couple of days later, a friend who studied at the same university where the professor used to teach sent me a message. She knew I knew him and told me that he had passed away 2 weeks ago from a heart attack. They had held a tribute for him at the university that day, and she remembered me because he had mentioned me as one of his favorite customers. I was really sad when I read that, but then I read it again, specifically where it said he had died 2 weeks ago. I realized that just 2 days ago, I had heard him talking to me at the drive-thru. I was scared, but also my eyes filled with tears because I knew he had come to say goodbye. I was in shock, but I felt a deep sense of loss, knowing I'd never see him again, stopping by for his hamburger. The next day, I told my classmates what had happened, and they couldn't believe it either. A coworker who was good friends with the manager asked if we could see the recordings from that night. The manager finally agreed after a lot of convincing and looked for the exact day and time. But even after watching an hour of footage in fast motion, the man's car never appeared, nor did he show up on foot. We only saw other cars with different people driving. We were all really impressed. It was clear that it was something paranormal. The only explanation was that the man had come to say goodbye to me. I still remember him fondly and hope he's in a better place now. I'm Fernando. I'm 23 years old, and I work the night shift at a McDonald's. I started this job because I needed a steady income while I finished college. Working at night suits me because I can study during the day, but let me tell you, the night shift can get pretty eerie sometimes. What I'm about to share with you is real, and even though I've tried to find a logical explanation, I still don't have one. This all started about a year ago. I was taking orders at the drive-thru window, just like any other night. There's usually less traffic at night, so I try to stay in a good mood and make the experience pleasant for the few customers who come by. One night, a lady pulled up in a car that looked like it had seen better days. From the moment she started talking, I knew she was different. She wasn't just another customer. She complimented me a lot while I took her order, saying things like, "You have a nice voice, and you seem very friendly." At first, I thought she was just a bit quirky, maybe even sweet. I'm respectful to everyone, so I smiled and gave her her food without thinking much of it. But then she started coming every night around the same time. Her comments got more and more uncomfortable. She told me she liked my eyes, that I had something special. It got to the point where she asked me out. I always answered politely but tried to keep my distance. My coworkers noticed that she always asked for me. If she saw someone else at the window, she'd ask for me specifically. At first, they joked about it, teasing me that I had a stalker, but over time, they realized it wasn't funny. There were nights when they covered for me so I wouldn't have to serve her, but that only made her angrier. One time, she even parked outside the window, staring straight at me as if she was waiting for me to leave. The worst part was when she started waiting for me after my shift. The first time I saw her outside the store was on a Friday, around 3 a.m. She was leaning against her car, smoking. When she saw me, she smiled in a way that gave me goosebumps. She came over and offered to drive me home, saying I shouldn't walk alone so late. I told her I was fine, but she didn't leave. This happened several times, and each time she became more insistent, making propositions that I don't even want to repeat. I tried to avoid her as much as I could, but it seemed like she wasn't going to stop. The situation escalated one night when I finished my shift and was walking towards my house. I didn't realize she was following me until I got close to my door. She grabbed my backpack and tried to hug me, saying things that terrified me. Her look was unhinged, and for a moment, I thought she was going to hurt me. I managed to break free, ran to my door, locked it, and called the police. The woman was screaming and crying in front of my door, demanding that I let her in. I told the officers everything, and by the time they arrived, she had already left. The next day, they helped me process a restraining order. After that, I thought I was finally free of seeing her. Months went by, and I felt calm again, thinking everything was behind me. But a few weeks ago, while I was closing up the place, I saw her again. She was standing outside, right next to my car. Her figure was unmistakable. Even though the light wasn't very good, I recognized her silhouette and her posture. She had that same fixed gaze she had when she was stalking me. I didn't dare go out, but I couldn't just stay there and do nothing. I called the police again and asked them to come quickly. When they arrived, I went out to talk to them, but to my surprise, there was no one next to my car. I told them what had happened and described the woman. That's when everything took an unexpected turn. One of the officers looked at me seriously and said, "That woman who was stalking you has been dead for a while. She died months ago in a car accident near here." After hearing that, I didn't know what to say. I swore to them that I had seen her, that she was there just a few minutes ago, but they insisted that I must be mistaken. How could I be mistaken? I had spent months watching her every night. I knew exactly what her face looked like, her gaze, her way of standing. I was completely sure it was her. That night was torment. Couldn't sleep. I kept seeing that fixed gaze, feeling the same suffocation I felt when she stalked me. I couldn't stop thinking about what the police said. How was it possible that she was dead? I saw her. I recognized her posture, her silhouette, even her clothes. I was as sure as if I was seeing any living person. But at the same time, how could I explain why she disappeared in a matter of seconds? I began to think about everything. Why did she keep appearing after so long? Was there something she wanted to tell me? Or was it just a way to scare me? What torments me the most is that even though I know she was dead, the fear I felt was the same as when she was alive. It was as if she had never really left, as if her obsession wouldn't end even with death. I've come to think that there are things we leave pending, intentions or emotions so strong that they don't disappear even when we're no longer here. If that's true, then I don't know if I was another victim of something she couldn't let go of in life, or if it was just a macabre coincidence. After hearing Fernando's experience, I ask you, who are listening to me, do you think that people can leave something so strong behind that their presence is still here even after they die? Or do you think that sometimes our own experiences make us see things that aren't there? I want to know what you think. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Maybe Fernando can find an explanation for this if there is one.